Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another TI-84 tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about the function shortcuts on your calculator. So let's get started. So if you look on your TI-84 calculator, at the very top you have 5 light gray buttons, or you should have 5 light gray buttons. Above each of those you have words in blue writing, and then you have F1 through F5 in green. So I want to go through and I want to talk about what those F1 to F5 function shortcuts do for you. Let's start with F1. So if you hit the alpha button and then Y equals, you get the F1 shortcut. And you can kind of see what the other function shortcuts do. So you'll see here at the bottom of the screen, you see frac, func, matrix, and yvar. So what do each of those do? So F1 deals with fractions. And the main ones that I feel like you're probably going to use is the first one or the second one. The first one allows you to input a fraction. So you can do 8/5 very nicely. Why do that? Instead of we do that, great, we get 1.6. We could have done 8 divided by 5. Why is this important? Why do this? Well, if you're dealing with a function or maybe a really complex looking division, let's go back and try, 8 squared minus 5 plus 2 times 3 all over, let's do 7 just for fun. Enter, we get this lovely decimal. How do I do that without? Well, I'd have to use parentheses and make sure that all of my my lovely work is inside of parentheses. It's much more of a hassle and does not look nearly as pretty, but it does work the same. What is the other option for F1 that you're probably going to use? Well, that would be this one here, which is a mixed number. So if I want 2 and 1/3, and I want to add, whoa, that's not what I want. There we go. And I want to add, let's say, 5 and 3/4. It's going to do it. It's going to do it properly. And right now I have mine set to automatically give me decimals. I can switch my mode to all the way down here at answers. I can switch it to auto, redo it, and it will give it to me as a fraction. By default, it's always going to give it to me as as a improper fraction instead of a mixed number. So you'll have to convert it back if you want it to be a mixed number. So that is F1. F1 deals with fractions. You can use the other options if you would like. We can explore those a little bit. So what does this do? This will turn a regular fraction into a mixed number. So you have that. And I do believe that if we use it again, it'll switch the mixed number into an improper fraction. So that is what the third option does, is it switches between improper fractions and mixed numbers, vice versa. And the bottom one, which is number 4, will switch from a fraction to a decimal, or a decimal to a fraction, vice versa. So those are your F1 shortcuts. F2, let's keep on going. So F2 gives you some function shortcuts. So if you are in pre-calculus or calculus and you're like, I need some, quick function things, you have them. You have the absolute value as number 1. Remember that absolute value is the absolute distance from 0. So if I type in -6, -6 is 6 away from 0. I have summation, really, really fun. We start talking about this in calculus. You might talk about it in pre-calculus, depending on where you are and who's teaching it. But you have that lovely notation. You also have derivatives, so you can use the calculator for derivatives. You have integration, which is, another lovely calculus thing. We go back to pre-calculus or maybe even algebra 2, you have logarithms where you get to choose the base. Remember that the ln button is base E and the log button is base 10. So if you have any other log, you can hit F2, go down to 5, and use that. Please keep in mind that this works like every other window in your calculator, meaning if I hit F2 and then I want the fifth option, I can just hit the number 5 and it will also pop that out. If we clear that out, we have some other options. You have the X root. So if you're using something other than the square root, you can use this. And then you have some of your statistics options. You have permutations. You have combinations. Permutations, combinations are different ways to sort a different number of objects. Permutations or order matters. Combination, the order doesn't matter as much. And then the last thing you have is the factorial as number 9. And factorial is multiplying that number by every integer beneath it. So 6 would be 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 720. So F2 is your function shortcuts. Now, something that we're not necessarily going to get to in my pre-calculus class, but you might get to in your class, is matrices. So you can create a matrix, and it's a made-to-order matrix. You can choose how many rows and how many columns you want. Let's say I want 3 rows and 2 columns. We'll hit OK. And it'll pop out a matrix, and I can input anything I want into it. There we go. And last but not least is F4, which is Y variables. Why use Y variables? Well, if I go to the Y equals screen, and I put in a function, so let's put x squared. Very nice, very simple, right? I can actually use the Y variables like function notation. So I can do Y1, parentheses, pick any number I want. Let's do 5. Well, f of x equals x squared, evaluated at 5 would be 25, and we get 25. This is kind of useful if you wanted to do rates of change. If I wanted to find the rate of change for x squared between 3 and 5, I can actually use a combination of my F shortcuts. So I can set up a fraction. Let's say I want the rates of change between 5 and 3. Oh, wrong one. There we go. And then I would do 5, take away 3. And it does it all in one step. So very nice if you have the calculator with you to help you out with that. Some other things you could use the Y1s for is you could use it for storing regressions. So if I go to the stat button and I go and I make a list, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's say that we are, we're doubling. So we'll do 2, 4, 8, and then 16. So this would be a exponential function. So if we scroll all the way down to exponential, which is 0, I can actually say I want to store my regression equation into one of my y variables. I've already got one in y1, so let me put this in y2. So when it calculates, it has this lovely function. It tells me that it's 1 times 2 to the power of x. It's going to store that into y2 for me automatically. So that's another use of the Y tool. I can also do some weird stuff, like I can actually make a weird version of the function. Maybe I want to take the Y1 function and I want to translate it to the right 3. Well, I can just call upon what the F1 or the Y1 function was, and just say I want to translate it that way. So we can use function notations or function transformations with this and treat it like function notation. Lots of words there. So that is it for this. As you can see, there is no F5. So even if you go to F1 and you see and you scroll over, there is no F5 yet. If Texas Instruments decides to implement it, then we can go over it then. But this is really all you have for your function shortcuts. So good luck to you. Hope this helps you with the practice, and I'll see you in the next video.